Hey, welcome to Life in the Leadership Lane. I'm your host, Bruce Waller, where I get to talk to leaders that are making a difference in the workplace and in our communities. What did they do to get started? And what are they doing to stay there? And oh my goodness, here we go. Season 7, and I am bringing you another special guest. As today I'm getting to talk to Njsane Courtney. Njsane is the Vice President of Human Resources at American Bureau and Shipping. He's also a podcast host. We're going to talk about that today. My friend in HR. He does a little bit of speaking. I got to see him do a keynote at the Texas SHRM Global Conference. I think that's where we met. How you doing, Njsane?
Doing good, Bruce. Good to be here, man. I'll be honest. Let me go ahead and start off by saying I'm a little starstruck. So I'm going to try to keep the fanboyism down to a minimum, but I'm glad to be here, man.
I love it. I always like to start my show reflecting on when I met my guests or when they came into my path. And for you, I just mentioned Texas SHRM Global Conference. That's the first time we met. And I remember we actually met prior to the conference at a networking event. We started talking, and you said something that I'll never forget. You said, we mentioned something that we had a common thread, and you said, "Did we just become best friends?" Do you remember that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sometimes people just sync up immediately. And I just felt that like we literally became best friends ever since then, right?
Isn't that amazing though, how you connect, like when you get out and you network and you share your story, how powerful those connections are. Isn't that amazing?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what it's really all about, right? We all have a story, we all have a journey and a path, and it's amazing. Like once you start talking, how similar some of our paths are, and even
Mm.
some of the things that aren't similar, or some are things that can still bring us closer together by just sharing those stories.
Yeah, I try to encourage different people in my network, a lot of business leaders, a lot of people leaders. I try to encourage them to always get out and go to these networking events. A lot of times we just got so many things going on, but when you go to a networking event, you like meet some of the most amazing people, and when you share your story, all of a sudden, it's like your world just opens up, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, again, it's really just about being familiar with each other's story, right? Because you'll
Mm.
sit there and listen, and especially in the people business, being in HR and the further up you move, it can be kind of a lonely place, and
Ooh,
sometimes you feel like you're kind of in this alone. But if you're not really tapping into those stories of other people and realizing their journeys can be, somewhat similar to yours, you're really missing out on a cool opportunity to connect and just kind of leverage each other's skills.
yeah, I built my career on networking. And I was just thinking just now when you said that, we both have interviewed a mutual friend, Steve Brown. And I remember one time he talked about how important it is to have at least 5 people outside the workplace that you can talk to. And that's what you get by networking. You develop these relationships outside the workplace where people can relate to like what you're going through and can really encourage you and give you insight on different things. And so anyway, I love that. I loved seeing you and getting to meet you there. And I look forward to our conversation today and super honored to have you on the show. I always like to start the show though, man. I want to hear the Njsane Courtney story. Like, where did you grow up? And how in the world did you get into leadership and all things HR?
Oh man, so I don't know if you've ever watched the movie Still Magnolias. I'm totally dating myself.
Yes.
But that small town that movie was filmed in is actually my hometown. It's a little
Oh,
town called Natchitoches, Louisiana,
okay.
central Louisiana. It's so funny because when I mention that to other folks from Louisiana, they're like, "Oh, that's North Louisiana. You might as well be Oklahoma or East Dallas, right?" But that's where I grew up, born and raised, small town country boy. But in terms of leadership, I mean, I got my start in the Army, right? I
Mm,
was in ROTC in high school, and then I went to
mm,
Georgia Military College where I earned my career. Earned my commission.
mm.
And, ever since then, it's kind of been hammered in the importance of leadership. And then once I switched over to the civilian side, those things just kind of carried over. And so it's really one of those things where that's really where I got my foundation in terms of like, what is leadership? What does it mean to actually be in charge and help guide the careers of others? And really what a blessing it is to have the privilege to lead, because leadership, that's really what it is. It's a privilege.
Yeah, I love that. So let me, first of all, thank you for your service. I love that. My grandfather was in the Navy. I'm curious, like, what got you interested in getting into the ROTC? I mean, such an early age.
Well, I wish it was a real dynamic story. But it's one of those things, Bruce, where there are certain points in your life where you make decisions. And at the time, the decisions don't seem like a
Mm,
big deal. I
mm,
remember I was in ninth grade
mm,
and the school accidentally put me into two electives.
mm.
One was art and one was ROTC. And so
Oh,
about two weeks into the school year, the principal called me and they were like, "Hey, look, we made a mistake. You got to choose between one or the other."
mm.
And I remember like putting on the uniform one day. We called them the mean greens. It was those green uniforms we wore.
Okay.
And I remember the feeling that I saw wearing the uniform. And my mom, looked at me wearing it, trying it out. And I guess just moms, right? Oh,
Oh,
my baby boy. And so I said, you know what? This is where I need to be. And the funny thing, the reason why I say that's one of the most pivotal decisions
mm,
I've ever made in my life was I was like any other, like most ninth graders, right? You're
mm.
still figuring yourself out,
Yeah.
still trying to, figure out like, okay, what kind of person, what your identity is.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember hanging out with kind of a rough crowd in ninth grade,
Mm,
just because they were the ones who accepted me. And
mm.
they all were in art. And art at the time was kind of a gimme class, so to speak. Not a lot of productive things happened.
Yeah.
Nothing against the teacher. It was just the students. We were
Yeah, of
pretty rough.
course.
But it's funny, you fast forward the clock, and 5, 6 years from then, most of those individuals took kind of a bad path. They went kind of a
Mm,
dark road. And there's no reason why, if I would have chosen art versus ROTC, that I could not have wound up in that same situation.
mm,
And so it's one of those things where, like, that really, I will tell you, ROTC, not to be exaggerating, but kind of saved my life,
mm.
when you think about it.
That's a powerful story. I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, choices in life, they lead us these different paths and as we grow in our careers, we start, having more wisdom to make better choices. But early on, you're just trying to figure it out. I like to use the term find your lane.
Mhm.
I wrote the book in 2017 called Find Your Lane. And I'm just
Yep.
curious, like, okay, so you went into the Army, then you transitioned into civilian life in your career. How did you get into HR? And when was that moment when you found your lane? You said, man, this is what I like doing.
There's times I still think I'm still trying to find my lane. Uh,
I
this
love
people
that.
business that we're in, I mean, it always has, like, twists and turns. And one of the cool things about being an HR professional is that there's no limit to the number of situations that you'll face trying to maximize human capital for the business good, right? And
Mm,
so, I started off as a recruiter, right? A lot of HR professionals got
okay.
their start in the HR through recruiting. Then I eventually became, back then it was a generalist. There was no such thing as a business partner. That kind of,
Mm,
again, lets you know how old I am.
mm,
And then, again, business partner and growing into HR management, things like that. But I'll tell you, man, this thing we call human resources and people leadership, it never stops to surprise me, whether we're talking about how leadership and businesses switched to HR or leaned on HR during the pandemic,
mm,
or like this whole transformation with AI.
mm,
HR is always on the front of this, and it's trying to figure out our lanes, even in this new paradigm we call AI. It's real interesting, but it's just really kind of listening to that inner spirit, right? I realized real early, payroll was
mm,
not for me, right?
mm,
Nobody wants me managing their payroll.
mm.
That is not really my strong suit. But I really loved, like, working with leaders. I really love talking to employees about trying to have the best fulfilling careers. Because to my core, Bruce, it's one of those,
Mm,
I've always believed that, career fulfillment and business objectives don't have to be mutually exclusive. They can actually
mm,
feed one another. So
mm,
I'm still finding my lane a little
mm.
bit, but it's always been about the people that's really energized me.
Yeah, I feel like we're always navigating, and once we find it, we can't like stop. We have to always keep looking around. Is there something else that we can do or should do or do we need to change lanes? AI, you mentioned AI, it's come into play. And now all of a sudden hey, we need to change lanes here a little bit. We got to learn a little bit more about this. I would like to ask you this question, and I gave you a few questions before we started, but I was just sitting here thinking about, here you are, you served our country, you transition to civilian life. You become a recruiter, and then you kind of worked your way up. Was there like something in particular, like you're a vice president of human resources now, right? So you have done the work to get to where you are now. Was there anything in particular that you feel like kind of stands out? Because there's a lot of people listening right now that are like, man, I'm trying to grow in my career. I'm trying to get my next. I'm a director now. I'm trying to become a VP, or I'm just got into HR. What did he do? Like, was there something that stood out that you feel like you could share that might help somebody that helped you grow and to become the person you are today?
I mean, there's a lot of things. I've been very blessed to work with some really amazing men and women, and I've gotten some really cool tips along the way. One of the first things I learned was that it's not always about moving up the ladder.
Mm,
Sometimes it's about gaining experiences that will propel you because you just never know. You're like one reorg or one acquisition away from your career taking a completely different pivot.
mm,
And so one of the things that really set me up for success was the fact that is that I never really said no to some of those assignments that people wanted or people
mm,
didn't want, right? And one of the first assignments I ever had was I had an opportunity at a previous employer to go to Africa,
mm.
to Nigeria. And a lot of people weren't really excited about, okay, you go deal with that. But that one decision to accept the assignment that nobody wanted, and let's be clear, it was not a promotion. I didn't get a whole
Mhm.
bunch of money for it. I got paid my normal salary, but because I made a decision, it ever since then I've always had international exposure. I've always
Mm,
been a global leader. I've always had the privilege of leading people across multiple countries, and you just can't buy that kind of experience.
mm,
But the first thing I would tell people, especially if they're young in their career, is be careful saying no to stuff, right?
mm,
And be careful saying no to different experiences because you can get pay raises, you can get titles, but you can't buy experience.
mm,
Experience will get you to that higher level because in a world where people say I ain't gonna, right? The people who truly like embrace what the experience, their job experiences and the different opportunities, those are the ones who stick out. And
yeah.
those are the ones who will develop the skills that will get you to those titles. Don't chase the title. You should always be aggressive and be driven, absolutely. But if people who tend to hop from job to job to get those titles, there's a point where that kind of plateaus out,
Mm,
especially once you get to the HR manager director level. So then it becomes what distinguishes you from your peers.
yeah.
It's those experiences. What have you been able to touch? What have you been able to work through? Have you been able to go overseas? Have you been able to work on an acquisition? All those things that sometimes don't look fun on the surface. My God, it's if I would have
Mm,
said no to a lot of those things, I don't know where I'd be at this point,
mm.
Bruce.
That's so good. When you were sharing that just now, I was just thinking about a clip I saw from President Barack Obama. And he was sharing that, there's always a place in the world for the people that raise their hand and say, I'll get it done.
Mhm.
And I just love that. And you just never know where it's going to take you. I wrote down gaining experiences and never say or try to never say no to assignments. I love all that. Hey, I want to talk. You're man, you're out there on social quite a bit. I love it. I love following you. If you're not following Njsane, you need to follow him. You'll learn a lot. But I saw you posted something that I thought it was interesting. It was almost like some crowdsourcing. And you were asking a question. You were asking people about topics that they wanted to talk about. And I'm going to get into your podcast here in a few minutes, but you mentioned these three different things, and I was just and I don't know where it went, but you said, "Hey, what do you want to talk about?" And it was like a poll. That's what it was. And the poll questions are around, do you want to hear more about influencing your branding? Do you want to talk about more about strategic HRBP, which I thought that was very interesting? And do you want to talk about building your network? Do you remember posting that? And do you remember what like stood out? Talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, I mean, just like a lot of folks out there that are trying to work towards being a thought leader in this space, you always want to make sure you're providing content based on what people want to hear, right? I can
Yeah.
I can sit here in my studio and think about what I think folks want to hear, but it's really good just to hear what people think. And so every once in a while I'll ping the LinkedIn community and say, "Hey, look, what do you guys want to hear about? And so there were, and I'll be honest with you, this is where AI kind of fed into it, because I kind of picked, like I said, hey AI, what are 4 or 5 topics that
Okay.
HR professionals this day and age are interested about,
Mm-hmm.
that my brand can help provide. And so they just kind of looked at, oh, based on what you do, here are 4 or 5 topics you can throw out there. And I threw it out there, and I just wanted to see what people said. And what was really interesting was there were 2 of those 4 that stuck out.
Okay.
There was
All right.
there was one was about becoming a strategic partner. How does that work, and what does that
Okay.
journey look like? And then the other one was presenting to the C-suite.
Okay.
And I think each
Oh,
one, I think one was like 39%, and the other one was 40%.
okay.
Um, and I really thought the branding one would be more, would get more, but I mean, it was a close third.
Okay.
And so, yeah, it was really interesting to see what people really wanted to hear about. And so, what I do with that is I do a lot of, I do what's called lunch and learn. So, what I do is I do one every month, and that's what I use to kind of determine what that content will look like for that particular episode.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
It's interesting you mentioned about presenting to the C-suite because I do a presentation around developing your influence. I wrote a section in my last book, Life and Leadership Lane, and I'm finding that now being the most requested topic for me to speak about. And there are these strategies to get buy-in with the C-suite. And it's very interesting because to me, because it just tells me that everybody's hungry to try to figure out what's the button I need to push to create influence in the workplace.
Mm.
Any thoughts that stand out for you, like people that are listening? Just real quick, the things I talk about, I talk about building trust, defining a problem, building a business case, developing sponsors, and being persistent. That's the framework around developing influence in the workplace. But whenever I went out to get that information, I went out and polled, similar to what you do. I went out there and polled high performing leaders, people leaders, and said, hey, what are your thoughts around these different things? And they would share insight. And so now I have real data to be able to share. I don't know, people that are listening right now and they're like, man, I just cannot get any buy-in. I cannot get any like, or what should I be thinking about whenever
Right.
I'm talking to the C-suite?
So every company's a little bit different.
Okay.
The culture is a little bit different, but it really comes down to who you're speaking to.
Hmm.
And so the first thing before an HR person gets in front of leaders, I always say is, make sure you're plugged into the business.
Hmm.
Because the last thing as HR professional you want to do is to finally make it to the table. And the next thing you know, you start preaching about a bunch of Department of Labor standards and FMLA and ADA and all these other things, right? That just goes with the skill set that you're supposed to have that. But where successful HR leaders tend to get buy-in is when they are able to quickly demonstrate that they are acutely aware of the business, right?
Hmm.
And they're able to translate all of these HR initiatives to the business. And I'll tell you, again, you talked about it a minute ago, like it's always learning, always growing.
Yeah.
I'm always looking for new ways to present information myself. Let's be clear. I don't have it down pat.
Hmm.
There's some times I'll go into a meeting like, well, crap, I just blew that.
Hmm.
But one thing that I have learned recently is that, the whole McKinsey style presentations where you kind of start off with the title slide and you have the agenda and you have all these other things. Recently, I've done away with all of that. And I
Hmm.
found myself having much more success.
Hmm.
So it's almost like when you post content, what's the hook,
Hmm.
right? And leaders, especially the C-suite, they don't have a lot of time.
Hmm.
And when they finally accept a meeting to HR, you've got to hit them hard. You got to hit them with the value proposition. Why are we here?
Hmm.
What are we trying to accomplish here? What's the risk?
Hmm.
And what's it going to cost?
Hmm.
And you start off real quickly saying, for example, if I want to, we recently redid our onboarding program, and that cost a little bit of money to revamp some of the things. And I literally started off by saying, we have an opportunity to increase employee engagement by over 40% with little to no cost. And, basically I just started with that, right? Which will
Hmm.
lower labor costs by not having to backfill within the first 6 months. And I listed all that. That was the first slide. There was no agenda. There was no good morning, I'm Njsane Courtney. Thank you guys for your time. There was none of that. And I've noticed that when you get to the point and you talk about what are we going to gain by even listening to HR, what are the risks if we don't do anything, and how much is it going to cost? Once you hit those 3 things and get to the ask, you tend to have a lot more success in terms of having influence versus an HR person who goes in there and says, well, if we don't do what I say, we're going to get
Mm.
sued. Because the first thing leaders say is, well, we never been sued before. And you
Yeah.
just,
Right.
and you're
Right.
trying to fight that perception. But I tell people, challenge what you think about how you traditionally present information, but also know your audience. And you gotta know about the business beyond
Mm.
the large financials. If you're a business partner and you support operations, what's keeping an operations leader up at night when it comes to its people? What's the competitive landscape look like?
Mm.
Who are our competitors and what are they doing in terms of people that gives them a competitive advantage that we might be able to develop ourselves? And you go to them with that kind of information, and that is when you become a trusted advisor versus the HR guy or the HR lady who's always telling them what they can't do.
I love this. I was thinking about Barbara Hoover when I took the HR certification. The very first thing she said is, you got to know the business. She
Gotta
said, you
know it.
don't need, it's not about HR, it's about knowing the business. Okay. You're getting this certification, so you're a certified HR professional, but you've got to know the business. And that's exactly what you're saying. You, you mentioned something here that I do want to touch on just for a second, because I've done this many times. And you mentioned sometimes you walk away and go, man, I blew that. And that's when we talk about failure. How do you
Mm.
get through that?
Oh man, it, it's it's rough, man. Depending
Yeah.
on the size of the failure, there's a
Yeah.
lot of times as HR professionals will build up this plan and we'll build up this idea,
Yeah.
and over a course of time while you're developing the presentation and doing the business case, you've built up in your head like, oh my god, this is going to be great. And then man, you just step up to the plate and you strike out. And
Mm.
whether it's just a bad day, maybe you're about to pitch something that's going to cost money, and the day before the monthly financials came out and this was just bad timing. Or maybe again, you didn't have a good pulse in the business and you missed a key item that might have gotten you buy-in. But
Yeah.
the thing about failures is the fact that they're not really failures. You just found a different way to succeed, right? it's
Mm.
it's not staying down but it's about getting back up. It's about learning from those mistakes and recognizing that there are very few singular mistakes that are career ending,
Yeah.
right? There's very few of those. And so, yeah, even the best of us. I mean, Simon Sinek, my God, he is like, he doesn't know he's my mentor, but he is.
He's what
So
he is.
If Simon, if you're listening, call me. But but he talks about when he's made a mistake. David Ulrich, he's talked
Yeah.
about mistakes that he's made. Some of these folks that we kind of put on these pedestals as being keenly acute to like what makes good workplaces and things like that. But
Yeah.
they've all made mistakes.
Yeah.
Nobody's batting 100. And so
Hmm.
at the end of the day, just recognize that we're all going to make mistakes. I've made 3 this morning.
Mm.
Um, and, and, but at the end of the day, that is the very few mistakes are just, oh, my career's over. It's just about figuring out other ways to succeed, other ways not to fail, and
Yeah.
just learning from those experiences.
Yeah. I love what you said. It's a different way to succeed. Write these words down. I've got a full page of notes right here, Njsane, by the way. But I want our guests to write this down. I know you're taking notes right now in your journal. I want you to write down, we have the opportunity today to blank. And start your presentation like that. Jasani mentioned that. That's a great attention getter just to kind of get started. And man, I'll tell you right now, that's gold right there. I just love it. I'm like, I got chills just thinking about my next presentation. We have the opportunity. I love that. Hey, I want to talk for a few minutes about your podcast. My friend in HR. I was just curious, like you're first of all, you're a busy guy. You're a busy, you're a busy business leader. What motivated you to start a podcast? And what are some things you've learned since you've started that podcast? Talk a little bit about that.
My friend in HR kind of started, I was having coffee with a friend and she was telling me how, and she's an HR professional.
Hmm.
She's a fellow HR professional. And she talked about how she didn't feel like she negotiated her most recent offer the
Oh,
right way. And
oh,
so we were talking, and keep in mind, this is an HR professional. So you would think everybody knows all the tricks because we're all in there, but doesn't mean we have any other leg up. But I'm sitting there listening to her and I'm just like, man, if you would have just done this or just done that, you probably could have leveraged. And she just kind of gave me this look. She's like, yeah, I guess I should have. I didn't even think about it like that. And then I kind of went home, and for some reason that conversation just stayed in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of those things where, like, how many people that we know could have much more successful careers, but they don't know what they don't know.
Mm.
Again, sometimes as an HR professional, we have an inside track on, what to say when it comes to an offer and things not to say, but the average employee has no idea. And again, I go back to what we said earlier, is that when people have good careers and they're empowered to have good careers and they make great choices and they feel good about where they work and where they're going, they tend to perform better. And
Mm.
when they perform better, the company performs better. It's not about, sticking your chest out and being a jerk at work, but it's about empowering people with information
Mm.
so that you can make better career decisions. And then also, I talk a lot about leadership. I talk
Mm-hmm.
about the challenge of leadership. I talk about having, courageous leadership, professional courage, managerial courage. That if you're in a leadership role, take that seriously, because in terms of our employees having great careers, the supervisor has such a massive impact
Mm.
on how an employee feels at work. And we spend
Mm.
so much time at work. So I talk about a lot of these things in the careers, leadership, workplace culture, because I feel like in this day and age, with all the information out there, we can do better. We have the ability to have good careers and to really make decisions that will benefit us in the company. But at the end of the day, it takes information. And we
Mm.
have to be okay with opening the doors to some of that information and not safeguarding it. And I think that's really where the power of My Friend in HR comes in at. It's about putting information out there that's going to benefit people. Because again, if I feel good at work, if I feel
Mm.
like I got control of my career, I feel like I'm going down the right path, I'm going to kick butt at work. And if I kick
Yeah.
butt at work, my employer is going to benefit from that. And so there's this reciprocity that by sharing information that everybody gets to benefit.
It's one thing to have a conversation with someone, but it's another thing to act on that conversation. I remember going to a networking event. We talked about networking earlier. And as a matter of fact, it was an event I really wasn't wanting to go to because I was just tired after work and I just wanted to go home. But I said, you know what? I committed. I'm going to this event. I had a conversation with a people leader, and we were talking about the power of certifications. And the question was, if two people walked into a room and one had a certification and one didn't, would that person with certification have more weight? And the point wasn't necessarily about that. The point was, I thought it was a very interesting conversation. I went home and I wrote a blog about it, and that blog kind of blew up.
Mm.
And so I'm just, I don't know, for those who are listening, I mean, talk a little bit about that because I think that's an uncommon thing for people to take something and actually put that into action to serve others.
So I will tell you some of the best advice that I ever got, and I'll break your answer up into two parts. So
Hmm.
it was so early in my career. Um, I remember I was working at a place and I really wasn't happy, but it was a good job. It was a decent
Okay.
job.
Okay.
Nothing against the organization. It wasn't more of a me thing, right? And
Hmm.
and what there was an individual, he was the general counsel for that company, and he didn't realize that he was really my mentor, almost like Simon Sinek. They don't know that, but um, but he told me, he's like, Njsane, you're doing all right, but you don't look happy, and people kind of notice that you don't really look happy. And he's like, so, why are you, what's going on? And I was like, well, I really don't want to go anywhere because I'm about to hit my fourth year and I'm about to get my extra week of vacation. And I really don't want to sacrifice that time. And he just looked at me and he says, you do realize that there's jobs out there that you can walk in with 3 weeks. And it's, again, I'm HR, and that never clicked,
Hmm.
that you can actually control your own destiny and find something. If what you're doing right now isn't giving you fulfillment, you have
Hmm.
the opportunity to change that trajectory. And it's just one of those things where you really have to make sure that you stay true to what it is that gives you fire and passion.
Hmm.
The other thing is, and this is going to get a little deep, but in my garage, if you ever come to Houston, I'll show it to you. But in my
Okay.
garage,
All
I
right.
have a jar. I have a jar full of marbles.
Hmm.
And as a Black man in America, I run the numbers. Said, okay, the average lifespan is 72 to 75 years old.
Yep.
And so I did the numbers and I said, huh, if that's the case, I have this many weekends left.
Okay. Yep.
And so there's marbles in my jar that represents a weekend. And every Saturday I take a marble out.
Hmm.
And so people look at me and they says, "Oh my God, Njsane, you're a husband, you're a father, you're in HR, you do your podcast, I do competition barbecue cooking. I actually go to the rifle range and I do some competition, shotgun shooting, things like that." And they're like, "How the heck do you have time for all that?" And I was like, "I don't have time not to, because
Mm.
there's a reminder, like, because in the back of our mind, we all know that our time on this earth is limited, but still, as human beings, we kind of overlook it. We still think there's
Mm.
always more." And so having a symbolic symbol, having a symbol in my garage and it's so funny because when I started it, that jar is really, the number of marbles has definitely declined since it's a little morbid, but the thing is that you have to have that fire,
Yeah.
light that fire under your butt to get up and get moving, whether it's to be a better professional, whether it's to be a better partner, whether it's to be a better, a parent, whether it's just to be excel in your career or get that degree or get that certification or whatever it is, folks, you
Mm.
know, go out there and get it, because this is the one life we have. And at the end of the day, none of us are going to get to our last days and say, man, I wish I would have answered more emails. Or
Mm.
man, I wish I would have answered, I would have had more Teams calls.
Mm.
We're going to talk about opportunities not taken.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about those decisions that we could have done this or we could have done that.
Yeah.
And the last thing any of us want to be, especially from a professional standpoint, is to live with regret. So that's really what
Mm.
motivates me to really just go out there, make my mark, and let's see where it goes.
Dude, you are like full of inspiration. That is so good. I was thinking about when you said that, I was thinking about I have over on my wall, you can't see it here, but one of those big calendars, Jesse Itzler.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a wall calendar. And I don't know, it's probably, 4 foot by, 2 foot on my wall. But what he does is he highlights those weekends and you can tell like you can look at the full year and go, wow, there's not that many weekends in the year. So if you're not intentional and you
Mm.
don't put down what you're doing on there, and so every at the end of the year, I'm first thing I'm doing is I'm looking at I go to all the Oklahoma college football games. So first thing I do is I put my red tag on all the football games coming in,
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
I start putting my tags on things that are important to me. Maybe I'm
yeah.
going to a conference, maybe I'm taking a vacation with my wife and kids, whatever that is, and so what you're saying is you're being intentional. And many times we're managing our days and we have the opportunity to really lead our life if we'll be intentional, right?
Yeah, I mean, you know what? So you use the right word there, Bruce. Intentional, right?
Mm.
Even if, and I'm a gamer too. I'm a big nerd. I'm a big gamer.
Oh,
And even if I am in my room playing PlayStation, right, playing a game, video game, which
uh-huh.
some people listen to as like, oh my God, such a waste of time. But everything I do these days is intentional, whether it's slacking off, whether
Mm.
I'm listening to a sci-fi audiobook or I'm listening to Simon Sinek's new book, or even when I sit down with my daughter and play with her, like every moment is intentional. There are no more, I'm just goofing off, right? Even when
Mm.
I'm goofing off,
Yeah.
it's intentional, right? It's
Yeah.
like I'm recharging, I'm getting
Yeah.
back to my center or
Yeah.
whatever it is. But just don't throw away a day, because I will tell you, you watch all these videos of all these really successful men and women. Remember, they have the same 24 hours you do.
Uh,
There is nothing
oh,
different. It's just about how they choose to utilize it and their intention about their time and what they choose to invest their energy in.
yeah. That's so good. I love all that, man. I've learned so much about you today. Your competition barbecue, we haven't even talked about that. I'm
Mm.
super stoked about that. I'm talking about you're a gamer. Simon Sinek's your
Oh yeah,
mentor. Simon, give him a
totally,
call.
totally.
He's your,
Give me a
he's
call.
your
Call
friend.
me. Call me, Simon.
I love it, just honey. This has been so good. I would love to ask you. You've given a lot of great advice here. You've talked about some proud moments in your career. You've shared a lot of good, like so much good here. But is there some advice that you were given that you find yourself sharing with others often? For those listening right now, what would you share?
My biggest advice is again, it goes about just being intentional.
Mm.
That is the biggest thing. It's just make every day count. even if it's just, I'm going to go read a book and enjoy a delicious sandwich, right? Make
Yeah.
that intentional. Because again, time is finite. Money, we can make more money, we can buy houses, we can buy cars,
Yeah.
but time, you can't go on Amazon and buy more of it. You once you've let that second, fly off, there is no getting it back. So my thing is I really push to anyone listening to your show, you know, sit down and think about it. And if you're religious like me, pray about it and just
Yeah.
figure out, like, what is it that gives me passion? And if it's philanthropy, if it's civil service,
Mm,
if it's just being an amazing dad or mother or whatever the
mm.
case is, put your energy and heart and soul into it, so that you don't end up, later in life having regrets. Right? We can always say that, man, I made mistakes, I made this, I made that, but man, it was
Mm,
a life worth lived.
mm.
And that's where we all want to get to, whether you're in HR or you're a doctor, or whether you fly a plane or whatever it is you do. Make every day count. Don't just throw days away like it's just disposable paper towels. Make it count and just go out there and be amazing, because everybody has that in us to do that, to be amazing in whatever it is we're passionate about.
And by the way, and that's such good advice. And by the way, I saw this morning you had posted, you were up at 4 o'clock in the morning, by the way. So,
I am.
again, you said everybody has the same amount. You have 24 hours. You decide when you want to get up. I remember years ago, I started the 5 a.m. club, and that's when my career really started changing. That was about 10 years ago, maybe longer, and really started taking a turn is because I started finding more time in my day, go to bed early, get up early, and all that. Hey, I want to touch on one thing that I hadn't talked about before I get to It's Time to Accelerate real quick. And then you also do some speaking. Talk just for a second about just some of the things that you like to talk about when you do a keynote speaking event or speak to different groups.
Nowadays I find myself talking more and more about workplaces, right? How to have positive workplace culture and things like
Yeah.
that. Because in this day and age, right, you see more and more of just this separation, this rift growing between employers and employees.
Yeah.
Nowadays, if someone actually tells you, Bruce, man, I really love my job, people look at you crazy, right? Like, what? Which, that's not the way it's supposed to be. And so what I find myself wanting to speak more about is, like, how do we drive better workplace culture? And to a lot of people listening, let's be clear, it's not just on managers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, leaders, we have a very large role to play because
Yeah.
our decisions affect culture. But employees have a big impact on the workplace culture as well, in terms of how we treat each other, fulfilling commitments, making sure that we're pulling our weight. But at the end of the day, like, I really love talking about leadership. How do we level up our leadership? How do we make sure we safeguard the careers of the people that we're blessed to lead? And how we as individuals impact our overall workplace culture? Because we spend way too much time at work every day to
Mm,
work at crappy workplaces. We just,
yeah.
that's a fundamental belief of
Yeah,
mine.
right. I love that. And I got to see Njsane speak at in Austin, Texas. And you're very motivational. You're a motivational speaker. Yes, you do give a lot of good things that you can take action on, good advice, all that, but he's very motivational. So this is such good stuff. I love this. I want to jump over to It's Time to Accelerate. I told you the time was going to fly. I noticed that you posted somewhere, I cannot remember, you love 80s trivia. And I thought, well, gosh, you know what? I haven't done this before, but I might pull up a couple of questions on this just to see how you fit here, Jasani. So
All
I'm going to
right.
ask a couple of questions, and I want you to just throw out something you enjoyed about the 80s. I'm an 80s guy.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
the first question is which artist had the most number one singles on the Billboard Hot 100 in the 80s?
Michael Jackson.
Oh my goodness. Ding, ding, ding. That is it, man. I love that. And then, okay, let me throw a couple more at you.
Mm.
How about this one? Who was known as the Queen of Pop in the 80s?
Tina Turner.
This right here, I don't know. I
Uh,
have to give credit. This is Madonna, but I
ah,
like Tina Turner also.
okay. Okay. Yeah. I
I
might.
can,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
I can
Yeah.
see
I'll
that.
give it to her. Yeah.
I,
I like that.
yeah, I love that. I love that.
Okay.
And then let's see if I can get one more, and that is How about what was the first music video played on MTV? I know you got it in your mind. You're just trying to
Wait,
think. What
it was
is
a rap
that?
song. It was a rap song, wasn't it?
Video killed the radio
Radio
star.
Star, video.
Yeah, you
Oh
remember
yes,
that? Do you
yes,
remember
yes.
MTV?
Oh, totally. I told her, yo, I remember MTV. I remember Yo MTV Raps. I remember all that.
Wasn't that
I even remember the
fun?
song. We can sing it right now. Video
Video
killed the
killed the
radio.
radio star.
Oh, we.
That's bad. That's bad. This is so fun. You know, I hadn't done that before, and I saw your note. You liked that, and I thought I'm going to ask him some of this. Hey, let me ask you this. You're a continuous learner. What's something else you would like to learn to do?
So, all right. So we talked a whole lot a minute ago about workplace culture and things like
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
So I actually just started working on my second master's, and it's in industrial psychology. And so, like, that's kind of a thing that's my new thing is about how the brain works. And I'm reading a really good book right now. It's called Your Brain at Work.
Okay.
But it talks about the how our brains work during certain stimuli, and how do you really motivate people from a psychological standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
And Simon Sinek, I will tell you, Simon Sinek in his book Leaders Eat Last,
Yeah.
he has a whole like 2 chapters, and it talks about like the chemicals in our body where we're talking about endorphins or oxytocin. And oxytocin is the chemical that
Yeah.
actually allows us to form bonds and connection with people. So when we
Mm.
hug our significant other or kids, that warm feeling is oxytocin being released in our body. Where I'm going with this is you hear about how leaders say we want innovative, we want to innovate, we want to be
Yeah.
collaborative,
Yeah.
but at the same time they allow stress to thrive. Okay, so what creates stress? Cortisol, the
Mm.
stress hormone. The stress cortisol actually kills oxytocin. So
Mm.
when leaders allow high stress environments to thrive, they are actually creating the chemical that biologically prevents us from being able to trust and collaborate and being able to innovate. And so this whole viewpoint, this whole antiquated viewpoint of where people say, oh, pressure creates diamonds. And
Mm.
that's cute for geology, but not humans.
Mm.
Managed stress can build resilience,
Mm.
but unchecked stress just creates burnout. And so again, it biologically prevents us from forming those connections that truly allows companies to be innovative. So I'm getting all into that nerdy science aspect of people and how their brains work at work. So we'll see. We'll see where that takes me.
Man, this is so good. A second master's. Are you
Yeah.
kidding me? This is fantastic. I love that. I love that. And by the way, I have listened to Eaters Eat Last before on Audible. I need to buy it and reread that. It sounds like a book I need to dive back into. Hey, I wrote a chapter on grateful leadership. Great leaders are grateful leaders. What are you grateful for, Jasani?
Oh man, I'm grateful for the man upstairs. I'm grateful because everything I have, everything that I will have is due to him. And it's one of those things where I personally believe, and again, not trying to be on a pulpit, but when you believe in something greater than yourself, it really minimizes problems. When you believe in something greater, whether you believe in karma or putting positive energy into the world, I'm just grateful because through him I have my wife, through him I have my daughter, through
Mm,
him I have gotten great opportunities professionally, and had exposures, and I've gone to almost every continent in the world, and I've seen so many cultures that I wouldn't have had a chance to do so. So but again, I can sit here all day and talk about all the cool things I've done, but it's not through me, it's through something
mm.
greater. So that is what I'm grateful for.
I love that. And I'm grateful for you coming on the show today and
Man,
sharing
there we go.
that. This is beautiful, man. This is beautiful. Okay, here's my last question. I've asked over 250 now, high
Hmm.
performers. Jasani, 10 years older. He's around the corner and he's knocking at your door. And you're going to go answer that door. What's he going to tell you?
Man, you gain weight. No, you know what? I, I want to believe that 10-year-old Jasani would actually be proud of the
Mm,
guy I've become, because I still I have that childlike mentality, right? You watch me, I'm watching old
mm,
school Transformers, old school
yeah,
GI Joe.
mm,
There's still a kid in me, although
yeah.
I have a lot of adult responsibilities and commitments. I just never want to completely let go of that child and
Mm,
that youthful exuberance that allows me to want to discover things. So I'm hoping that that 10
mm,
year old kid would look at me and say, "Well done, sir."
mm.
That's at least what I hope.
I love that. That's a wise 10 years older Njsane Courtney. I appreciate you, my friend in HR,
Thank you, man. I
just coming on
appreciate
the
it.
show today and sharing your wisdom and your perspective. For those who are listening right now and they're like, man, this guy, I want to follow him. I want to check out his show. I want to learn more from him. Or maybe I have a question that I want to ask him. What's the best way for people to connect with you?
My primary avenue is LinkedIn.
Okay.
People hit me up and they send me
Yep.
questions, and trust me, if I have time, I will always answer. I'm
Yeah.
on YouTube. My friend of HR is now a YouTube channel,
Okay.
so they can check out some of my video podcasts. But look, if they want to reach out to me, my friend in HR at gmail.com, they can hit me up. But look, like I said, don't ever be afraid if somebody has a question they want to ask. I always love bestowing my knowledge because at some point somebody had to teach me, right?
I love that. Yeah, we've learned from the people ahead of us. And so I will put all of these links in the show notes. You can click on that link and you can go straight to Njsane. And when you do, be sure and let him know, hey, I heard you on Life in the Leadership Lane. And here's something that you said that impacted me or inspired me or something I'm curious about. And it will make that connection so much easier. And so again, man, I appreciate you. I'm excited about your road ahead. You got some amazing things going. You got a lot of things going on, but they are all worthwhile things. What do they say? Everything worthwhile is uphill. You are
That's it.
walking uphill, man. And but I got to tell you, it's very inspirational, and I'm so grateful for you coming on the show and sharing that today. And I look forward to watching you ahead, my friend.
Thank you, and thank you for what you do too, Bruce. The content you put out there is amazing. You're actually again one of my heroes, and I was very honored to be on this show. So thanks so much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Awesome. Hey, I can't wait to share this. I'll talk to you later, man.
Thanks.